So give me a second.
You mean have people join the Zoom call?
No, it's just a link. So because I have to do it through Zoom, there wasn't a way to schedule it, I guess, through Zoom. And I thought I could do that, but it didn't.
Okay.
So just have to go here and then
I think that worked.
let me pin it. If I can, I think that's.
Oh, should I send an email out?
Sure. Yeah, that's.
Oh, okay.
Can you send me the
That
link?
worked.
Yeah.
Can you send me the link, Sarah?
So what, it's another link?
Yes.
So we should put that on the Facebook too, right?
Yes.
This one works.
No,
There's definitely a time delay though.
Yeah.
I just watched myself like walk into the room.
That's quite a significant time delay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's.
Oh, okay.
Oh, here we go.
That worked.
So what, it's another link?
Yeah.
So we should put that on the Facebook too, right?
Yes.
There's definitely a time delay though. It's a pretty significant time delay.
All right. I'm editing the posts that I put out on the Facebook.
I'm also sending an email.
Perfect.
Well, I put something saying there were technical difficulties, so you might want to repost the new link if it's different. Like say it's a new link. Like say it's a new link.
Yeah, I put corrected link.
Is it the one that you posted?
I just put it in the Zoom chat. It ends in WKO.
Okay.
You should put it on the Facebook page, right?
Yeah, I'm doing that now.
Oh, great, cool.
I'm glad the Zoom part's working.
Jamie, can you copy the Zoom link into the group chat just so I can send it to Josh?
Yeah.
Guys.
All right.
Is Tyler trying to? No. It's like he was trying to. He doesn't have.
Hey, good. I'm glad everybody's here. That's good. No Zoom link. It's just for the presenters. Don't worry about it, Ray. Did somebody get attacked by a parrot? We're just going to give everybody a couple minutes to jump over to this platform, and then we'll get started.
My dog is not a parrot. the delay is definitely a little weird because I'm like looking at the Zoom and then I'm looking at the YouTube page and I'm doing something completely different in it.
I think they have to do that as a safety feature now after they had some issues with live, so it gives them time to intervene if there's an issue.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Have you got it? You can sort of zap it if something does happen, right?
Yeah. All right, do you want to get started in another minute? Looks like we've got about 30 people watching, so.
Sounds good. So I'm not sure if Josh will join us.
Okay. He's with us in the comment section.
Yep. Shall we get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Zhang. I'm the current president of MACPS. I hope everyone's doing well in these times. We know that everyone's struggling kind of with the quarantine, but we hope you and your families are doing well in these times. We're very sorry to have canceled our in-person meeting at the North Museum, but we are very grateful for the North Museum for planning to host us, and we hope to actually have a meeting there at some point in the near future. However, we are very excited to have our very first virtual meeting, so I wanted to thank you all for joining us here. We have a really exciting schedule planned. Jamie, one of our board members, will be giving a demonstration on how to build the carnivorous plant terrarium. But before that, I'd like to just give a couple of minutes to introduce the new MACPS board that was instituted in November of last year. So if I could just have everyone who's there kind of introduce themselves, give a couple of sentences saying who you are, your interest in carnivorous plants, and what you do, in day-to-day life, that'd be fantastic. And we can start with Jackie, who's our treasurer.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm excited to be part of this organization. I'm excited to be part of this new virtual meeting. My name's Jackie Bowman. I am the Director of Living Exhibits at the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. I started growing carnivorous plants a number of years ago. My current favorite is a Nepenthes jacqueline, which I think I like the name. So, and I like Drosera and Drosophilum. But I encourage everyone to get excited about these wonderful plants.
Thanks, Jackie. Anna?
Hi, I'm Anna Mim. I am the secretary. I live about an hour outside of DC. Normally, I work in technical theater painting sets for plays and musicals. Right now, I do nothing because there are no plays and musicals going on. I've been keeping carnivorous plants for about 2 years. I got like 4 and then just got really excited and now have many more of them. I think my current favorite is a Drosera indumenta, but I like all types of Drosera. And yeah.
We also have Josh, who is our VP, but he's not on the Zoom call. But as far as I know, Josh is a fantastic aquarist and owner of, I think, Batfish Aquatics. How about Jamie?
Sure. So I have been growing carnivorous plants on and off for most of my life, but got really more interested in the hobby about 3 or 4 years ago. I grow everything from Nepenthes to Utricularia and Drosera, and even some smaller species like Ginlicea. I don't know that I could really pick a favorite, but the one that seems to be growing the best for me right now is a Nepenthes Splendid Diana, which is a really neat little hybrid. So, and I'm a board member for the society.
How about Tyler?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tyler Wilt. I'm a board member this year as well. And my normal day-to-day activities are being a graduate student at Towson University in Maryland. I study biology and I usually work with fish, but I love working with plants as well. And I've been growing carnivorous plants, I think, close to 10 years now. So my favorites are Sarracenia. I try to grow a little bit of everything when I can, but I absolutely love my Sarahs. And right now my favorite, I think, is my Georgia Peach, which if you were at a meeting last year, to talk about different natural hybrids, and that's a Citacina minor hybrid that has a peach colored flower because it's introgress. So I'm really excited to see that this year.
How about Alvin?
Hi, I'm an undergrad at Pitt right now, but I've been growing carnivorous plants since I was about 6 or 7 probably because of a David Attenborough documentary. As you can tell from my background, I really like Sarracenia. I go out into the New Jersey pinelands and see them a lot in the wild. So it's pretty cool.
Thanks. I see Josh might be connecting. Is he there?
It looks like he's still connecting. Just give him a minute.
Hey, Josh, are you there?
Oh, all right, there he is.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Hey,
Here you, Josh. You're
we're
good.
just doing some board introductions. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Can people see me? I have no idea what I'm doing.
Nope, you're just a talking name.
I'm just a talking name. All right, I will be a talking name. That might be best for people. You don't have to see me. I wonder if I could figure out how to turn the video on or not. 50-50,
Hey, there
did
you
I
go.
get it?
Yeah.
I
you
got it.
got
All right. Yeah, and I'm supposedly the least technically challenged. I'm Joshua. I'm the vice president for like 2 years now. I grow kind of a little bit of everything with plants, and that's about it.
Thanks. So a little bit about me then, I guess. I'm a MD PhD student at Penn. I've been growing carnivorous plants for over 10 years now, and just set up a Nepenthes grow tent yesterday, but I have a lot of Sarracenia, Venus flytraps, butterworts, kind of the whole gamut of everything by now. So thank you to the entire board for working really hard on planning all the meetings for the year, and also for planning this virtual event. A lot of logistics have occurred, trying to negotiate with different venues, and also, navigating all of the technology that has been needed for planning this event. Before we actually launch into our formal programming, I'd like to just take the time to talk a little bit more about MACPS for those of you who might be streaming, kind of far away and have never had a chance to actually attend one of our meetings. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you will be able to see a slideshow. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. So just to introduce our organization, the Mid-Atlantic Carnivorous Plant Society, these are the board members, the board of directors that we just previously introduced. So you can see all their beautiful faces here. In terms of where we actually cover, so the states outlined in green, well, colored in green, these are kind of the states that are formally within our region. But that being said, we also have people on our email list that are as far away as Alaska. So we have people from Alaska, California, Florida, Georgia, Alabama. And actually at some of our meetings, we've had a couple of these people come, even though they had to fly into our meeting locations. And as of now, we have about 184 people on our email list. We were founded in January 2017, so we're relatively new. We are a 501c3 nonprofit group, so this was a monumental effort that the board took on last year, and I'm delighted to announce that we are actually a 501c3. And if you haven't been to our website, I'll show you that a little bit later, but it's www.macpsociety.com. We try to hold about 4 meetings every year. And you can see below a couple of pictures showing you what our meetings have looked like in the past. So we've met at the Carnivorous Plant Nursery in Maryland. We've also met at a bunch of different universities, Millersville University, Princeton University, and the University of Pennsylvania. We've gone to Aquascapes Unlimited, which is this huge facility that specializes in growing Sarracenia and wetland plants. And we also were recently at Lily Pond's Water Gardens in Maryland. And you can see here just a couple of photos down at the bottom. So the bottom left, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this image shows one of our meetings at Millersville University. The middle image here was our very first meeting actually at Carnivorous Plant Nursery. Here you can see a bunch of members going on a tour of Lily Pond's water gardens. Bottom left image shows us at Aquascapes Unlimited. And the bottom middle picture shows two professors who actually came to give us a talk on Venus flytrap action potentials, and they were able to demonstrate that using an oscilloscope. We also try to hold about one field trip a year. So 2 years ago, we went to Cranesville Swamp in Maryland and Big Run Bog in West Virginia. And you can see pictures of that top right and also bottom right. And we took a group picture there. That's in the top top left. We also last year went to Tannersville Bog, which is up in northern Pennsylvania. So you can see a picture of us, our nice group there at the bottom left. And we were able to see Sarracenia purpurea in the wild, surrounded by lots of live green sphagnum. In addition to these meetings that we organize ourselves, we've also been invited to several events at various institutions located throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. So we participated in an Art After Hours event at the Baltimore Museum of Art. You can see that in the picture in the top left. We also were at the Thompson Park during a New Jersey Parks Day, and you can see a couple of us there in the top right image. The bottom two images show Bugfest, which was an event that occurred at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Pennsylvania. But in addition to these events, we've also been invited to the Rawlings Conservatory in Maryland. I'd like to give you a brief update about what we have planned for 2020. And unfortunately, given the COVID-19 pandemic, we're not exactly sure if we can actually hold these in-person meetings. However, rest assured, if we can't have an in-person meeting, we will definitely move it to a virtual platform, as you see here. So we currently have planned sometime in June a field trip to Suitland Bog. On August 22nd of this year, we'll be hosting a meeting at Carnivorous Plant Nursery in Maryland. And in October, we'll be partnering with several of the New York City carnivorous plant groups to hold a joint meeting. We do have an option for membership. So membership is on an annual basis. It does begin on January 1st and covers the calendar year. So in terms of membership benefits, you can sell in our auction. That being said, though, anyone can donate plants to our auction. We will also occasionally have auction of special specimen plants that are outside of our general meeting auctions. When we have field trips, for example, we will have some subsidies for members. Members can get a 10% discount at Carnivorous Plant Nursery. And we may also have members only meals or events, including some field trips. And we do have a couple of types of membership. So individual would be $20 a year, family would be $30 a year. If you're a student, that's $5 a year. And we have a corporate membership at $200 a year. And you can find more information on our website. An overview of today's schedule. So we have a couple of opening remarks that I'm currently giving. We have a board moderated Q&A, and a couple of you sent in questions ahead of time that I'll be reading off during that. We have a carnivorous plant terrarium demonstration with Jamie Algier, who is one of our directors. We will have a couple of member presentations, and then we'll close with a raffle. And I wanted to take the time to just thank one of our sponsors, Carnivorous Plant Nursery, who has been really instrumental in helping contribute to the society, both time-wise and financially. I wanted to also show a brief overview of our website. Let me see if I can actually pull that up. So if you've never been to our website, this is what it looks like. So we post all of our upcoming events in kind of this maroon box over here. Below, we have some information on our About Us, and we have a list of sponsors here. Under governance, you can find information on our board of directors, and you can also find our bylaws. Here's a list of our events. You can click individually to each of these to see pictures of what might have happened during those events. We recently started also featuring some of our members and the cool things they do online, whether it's video or website. So for instance, one of our members, Jerry Smith, sent us a video of his carnivorous plants and how he overwintered them this winter. Alvin and Dan DiPietro maintain this really beautiful blog where they talk about the carnivorous plants that they grow. And Rachel O'Leary was a former director of MACPS and runs a really prolific YouTube channel that on fish keeping, and has also recently started a channel where she shows off her plants. We have information on how to join us, so you can send us an email just to be added to the listserv, and you also can see information on membership. And we have a list of resources where you can go to find out how to take care of your plants, depending on what kind of plant you actually have. And there's a link to some other resources, other good websites where you can check out more information. So with that, I'd like to actually start our very first planned event, which would be the carnivorous plant Q&A. So I'd like to open it to the floor. If anyone has any questions, feel free to write it out on the YouTube stream, and we will try to answer them.
Did you want to start, Anna, with the recorded questions?
Yes, so we had some questions that people submitted ahead of time. One person asked, I need help with identification of common carnivorous plant companion plants as they emerge in the spring, what to keep and what to pull. Does anybody have any good resources or anything for companion plants that might pop up in your little mini bogs?
So I love having companion plants around. I try to keep a good variety of them. As far as like a resource, I don't know if there's a good book that has them, but there's a lot of websites you can go on that sell carnivorous plants that also sell a lot of those companions. If you look on Carnivorous Plant Nursery website, Meadowview Biological Research Station, and probably California Carnivores, amongst some others, you'll be able to find like some information on the commonly kept ones. If you get a lot of plants from different random sources, you might have some different things pop up. I would try maybe an app like iNaturalist to try to identify what they are and see if it's something that you want to keep or you think it's going to get too crazy and you don't want to have around.
And
I pretty much just let everything kind of grow in my outdoor, like I have a bunch of outdoor Sarracenia, like mini bogs, and I kind of just let whatever is there keep growing.
Just kind of a note with iNaturalist, I like to use that as a primary resource to give you an idea of what it might be, but it's always good to say, hey, does this look like an X or a Y? If you're not sure if it doesn't look exactly like one or the other, so that'll help narrow it down and give people a little better ability to help you identify it if you can narrow it down a little bit. And really the only thing that I pull out of my bogs or my plants is grass that comes up. Other than that, I'm not really, I don't really curate it too carefully.
All right. What are some good books and websites to learn about the difference in ideal growing conditions for different species? I know Savage Garden is, which I happen to have right here, is a really good resource. And then the author of it is the person who runs California Carnivores, which is a pretty big website. And I find that a lot of times when I'm looking for information on a specific species, I will actually look at places that are selling that species, because oftentimes the website will have information on like their growing conditions. And you can also email the seller. I've done that a number of times if I'm having trouble finding information on a plant, and the person who sold it to me has always been more than happy to answer any questions about growing conditions. Any other resources that you guys suggest?
ICPS has always been good. They have a pretty good database of plants and as well as their most recent kind of best practices, so to speak. So I use them a lot, and that's another great organization who has, I believe, quarterly magazines that they send out, and I've really enjoyed that. So you can learn a lot through ICPS.
I think there's also an FAQ that is written by Barry Rice, who is I believe, a professor over in California, but he maintains a really extensive FAQ on pretty much every topic that you could possibly imagine in carnivorous plant cultivation, going from the very basics to some of those proto-carnivorous plants that, we're not even sure are really carnivorous or not.
And where can we find that? Is that on
So
the?
that is on sarracenia.com/FAQ.
Another person is interested in growing carnivorous plants from seeds and is wondering places that they can get seeds in the mid-Atlantic.
I would say that you, for the most part, probably don't want to grow most carnivorous plants from seed. They are so slow starting that I think you're better off buying small starter plants. That said, a lot of the Drosera are fairly easy to start from seed and you get a lot of them, but the easiest way to get seed from those is going to be from other hobbyists. The only place I know of that actually sells seeds would be the Carnivorous Plant Nursery. Everybody else sells plants because it's just so much easier.
The International Carnivorous Plant Society has a seed bank. I believe you have to be a member of International Carnivorous Plant Society in order to access the seed bank. And that's obviously not just specifically from the Mid-Atlantic, and it varies what is on there because it's all member run. But that is a good place to look for
And
seeds.
you do have to be careful with that. I know a number of people have gotten mislabeled seeds before from the bank, so it's a good resource, but just something to be aware of. And I think the other thing you have to remember with carnivorous plant seeds is that a lot of them have shorter viability life. So if not kept in the proper conditions, you lose viability, especially with like Nepenthes seeds a lot more quickly. So sometimes ordering seeds from overseas and things is a risky endeavor because you're either going to get something that's not seeds, something that's poached, or something that's not viable. So keeping your orders, if you do decide to go the seed route, to reputable growers and people that actually have those plants is the safest way to make sure that you're getting something that's A, viable and B, sustainable.
All right, our next question is how to heat a terrarium. The person has a heated seed pad, but it doesn't keep it warm enough in their 55-degree basement.
So I can talk a little bit about that because before I switched to my current grow tent setup, I was growing lowland Nepenthes in a 75-gallon fish tank. And there is something that reptile growers use a lot called Flex Watt. It's basically a heat tape so that you can kind of surround your entire container, and it runs electricity through two metal strips on the edges, but there's high resistance, so that generates heat. And it's able to keep the terrarium probably, if I'm at room temperature around 70 degrees, it's able to keep the terrarium at about 80 degrees. Also, I put lights inside my fish tanks, so not directly inside the tank, but outside it. And if you have a little bit of glass covering it, that can also generate a sufficient amount of heat.
The next question is, we actually had two questions about how deep an outdoor bog should be. If you are digging a hole and lining it to have an outdoor bog, how deep should it be?
Really, your biggest concern is going to be not freezing whatever kind of liner you put in it and damaging it. And around here, that's going to give you about 18 inches or so. But if you're not super concerned about freezing and damaging it, you can go 6 inches or so, just enough to keep it wet. That's fine.
Okay. And on the same lines about the outdoor bog, somebody asked, is it a problem if there is no drainage and the only loss of water is through evaporation? In a bog, that's all of the water it's getting is rainwater.
I don't think that would be a problem at all. Most of the bog plants that you're going to put are going to be able to tolerate a lot of water. So having some standing water on them, who cares? The only problem you will get is if you don't have any drainage except from the surface and you get a heavy rain, you might actually lose your bog soil to native soil. And if you've got an area full of peat moss and it rains heavily, it's just going to wash out.
Is there any way to prevent that from happening?
I think the best bet would be to elevate it a bit and put some sort of drainage in it so that, maybe it's the top of the bog is maybe an inch or two above the surrounding soil and it can drain out. That being said, when you're digging it in, you can also always put holes in deep down, which would allow some drainage too.
So the next question is, last November, I acquired a Nepenthes planted in live sphagnum. It only gets watered from the bottom of the pot, but the pitchers are full of water. How does the Nepenthes secrete liquid into its pitchers?
The liquid inside of a pitcher plant is actually not water. It's made up of mostly water, as most liquids are. We're ugly bags of mostly water. Yeah, you knew I was going to say that. But the liquid inside of the pitcher has all sorts of enzymes and other chemicals in it as well. If you were to take your pitcher plant and drink the liquid out of it, don't do that. It would not taste like water. And because of that, you even wind up with animals that get into it and can't survive because it's not water. It's basically secreted by all of the cells around it. That said, there are actually animals that do live in them too, even indefinitely, and don't get digested. But there's acids, enzymes, and all sorts of stuff in there.
Any suggestions for Nepenthes that stay small?
Most of those are probably going to be some of the harder to find highland species. So I'm thinking like Nepenthes glabrata or argentii or stuff like that. I'm not sure if there's any like commonly available species that really stay small, because most Nepenthes are big vining plants that eventually are going to have to get staked up or trimmed at some point.
I would say Gracilis is relatively manageable. I grow that as an intermediate. It does produce a vine that tends to be rather long, unfortunately, but you can train it so that it stays relatively compact.
All right, the next question. I have 2 Venus flytraps I bought in a 2-inch pot. Should I divide them and plant them in my bog garden, just plant them in the bog garden without dividing, or keep them in their pots?
I think that's a personal preference. I mean, I personally like to keep them in the pots, so I would keep them there, but it depends on, where you got them. So is the questions I would ask are, is the substrate good? Is it potted in potting soil, or is it potted in something like half peat, half sand, or long fibered sphagnum moss? That would really dictate cultivation wise whether you should actually repot it or just keep it in the original pot. I grow all my fly traps in pots, but I know a lot of people who like to put them in bog gardens. It's personal preference.
Throw mine outside in the bog. I just throw them out there and they overwinter every single year and come back. So I would just put them in the bog. But perfect personal preference.
And I do something in the middle. I keep them out in a bog during the year, but I put them in orchid pots that are planted in there so I can pull them out later. Because I've gotten some cold winters and lost plants. So for the Venus flytraps, which in the Philadelphia area are a little more tender, can be more tender, that way I can bring them in and control their dormancy or put them on my porch.
Any recommendations for indoor carnivorous plants, as well as any recommendations for a nursery to buy them from? For indoor plants, I like to look more for like the tropical ones that don't have the dormancy period. That's my preference for the indoor plants.
Yeah, so I mean, is it physically possible to cultivate any plant inside? Absolutely. If you're able to provide the conditions, you can do that. But I find most growers aren't able to provide those conditions for a lot of the temperate species. So sticking with tropical species is going to be a lot easier to control those conditions because they're a little more used to the sort of thing that you might find in your house or on a windowsill. But you also may need to supplement light. So pinguicula, butterworts are often good indoor plants. They usually do pretty well inside. A lot of Drosera do. And then most Nepenthes are also very good inside growers. But again, depending on what type you have, you're going to need to make sure that those conditions are met. So something like a Nepenthes ventrata or a Nepenthes ex Miranda are kind of what I'd call like a living room or windowsill plant. You can get them to pitcher and grow well as long as they've got adequate light, water, and then humidity can also be an important part of that. If you're just getting started out, Drosera capensis is one of the ones I usually recommend for folks. It's pretty unkillable.
Any tips for repotting plants to reduce stress on the plant?
So I'll say it depends on the plant. Nepenthes, for the most part, are really particular about their roots being disturbed, at least in my opinion or my experience. So if I'm repotting a Nepenthes, I really don't mess with the root ball a lot. I'll add more substrate around it and pot up. But I also find that I don't need to repot them very often. They do pretty well in a smaller pot for quite a while. Pinguicula doesn't really have a ton of roots to begin with, so I kind of repot them a little more adventurously, I guess. So you can just kind of pull them up, and there's really not a ton going on down there. So I don't really have as much concern for them. And I found most Drosera are pretty in the middle. I haven't had a major issue repotting them either. I think the biggest struggle of like putting the plant into shock or something for me personally has been with Nepenthes.
Adding on to what Jamie said, I think a lot of the outdoor plants, so flytraps and Sarracenia, basically you can repot them and do whatever you want and they'll still be fine. I basically unpotted Sarracenia, kind of, just stripped off all of the soil on the roots, washed it in water, and then you stick them in and they're just as good the day right after. A lot of, as Jamie said, a lot of the indoor plants are a little bit fussier. If you've ever grown Cephalotus, that is in particular an extremely fussy plant. So in that case, like Jamie said, I would try to maintain as much soil as possible around the roots so you don't actually disturb it that much.
The best Nepenthes to grow in subtropical to temperate regions in the hanging basket.
So that's kind of a dangerous question, I think. So I'm not sure if whoever asked this question might be from, I guess, one of the more southern states, say like, North Carolina, Florida even, because you definitely could not grow a Nepenthes outdoors here year round. You could grow it outside during the spring, summer, and potentially fall, but definitely not over the winter. But, a lot of ones that most Nepenthes can probably go outside during the summer months if you provide them adequate shade. I think Highlanders might do a little bit better. In general, if you're dealing with some of the more easy to acquire Nepenthes, some of the more vigorous ones like Ventrata or Miranda, Ventricosa, those can do probably relatively well outside during these summer months. Definitely don't try it with, one of those ultra highland plants like Hamada or Inermis, things like that.
Are there any issues with letting a Nepenthes vine hang down instead of staking it up?
Hanging down is really their natural growth form. I always just let mine go wherever they will. I never staked one up. So I don't think there's any problem with it.
I believe that is all of the questions that we have. Unless there are any more in the YouTube chat, which I do not see.
We had a question that was submitted a little bit earlier by email, and that is regarding the best RO system that can produce at least 5 to 10 gallons of water per day. With the consideration also that the person that asked this would like to be frugal in water usage and knows that RO in general does dispose of a lot of water. Does anyone have any experience with having an RO system, like a high output RO system?
Bulk Reef Supply has a system which has a water saver design on it. It uses very, very little water. It produces, I think their smallest is going to be 50 gallons per day. So yeah, it would definitely be able to cover most people's water needs for plants pretty easily. I've got a 500 gallon per day system in my basement for my fish tanks. And actually have a spare 2,000 gallon per day system sitting over here.
What was the name of the company?
Bulk Reef, REEF Supply.
Okay, I'll put a link in the chat.
They're just bulkreefsupply.com.
Yep. And then the other comment I had kind of on that is I use, I test everything, but I actually use the wastewater to water my non-specific plants. So like my Monstera doesn't really give a crap what water I give it. So as long as the ppm isn't too crazy high, I'll take the off water and water some of my other plants with it, or water my outdoor plants with it.
What was there a name of that RO system, Josh?
Bulk Reef Supply pretty much only sells their own brand.
Okay.
And they've got some which are labeled Water Saver Pluses. They're the only ones I know of on the market which actually circulate the water to reduce waste.
And also don't forget to collect, whenever possible, if you can, to collect rainwater, because that's the best. I mean, that's personally what I do, is I collect rainwater all year round for them. So. And
if you're in the Philadelphia area, I know there's programs to get free water barrels.
Nice.
So make sure to check that out for our Philadelphia area members.
We have a few more questions that have popped up. Can Nepenthes raha grow with 80-degree days and nights in the high 60s?
So I have a raja that grows about 75 days and about 50 nights. I think it probably would do okay if it were kept in the high 70s and nighttime temperatures of high 60s. If you acclimate it, it'll definitely do better. I haven't experimented enough with that plant to actually know, but it might grow a little more slowly, but I think it probably would be okay.
Then another question. Many of my Sarracenia are blooming this year for the first time, which is exciting, but they are mostly forming clumps of smaller pitchers instead of large monopodial growths. Why?
I think that person really answered their own question. They're putting all of their energy into flowering right now, and they're not growing pitchers as a result. Once they get done flowering, they're going to probably put more energy back into pitchers, and it's going to be up to you which way you want the plant to go. If you want them to develop more vigorous, large pitchers faster, sooner, clip the flower.
All right, I think those are all of the questions that we have. Thank you, everyone, for offering your knowledge, and thank you, everyone, for submitting questions. I hope we were able to answer them.
There was one other question a little further up that I saw, and it was, do you have an indoor carnivorous plant recommendation list and then the nursery list? I know we listed carnivorous plant nursery, but does anybody else have any other resources that they like to buy plants from?
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately for us, a lot of the bigger nurseries are on the West Coast. California Carnivores always has really good plants, and they recently updated their shipping policy so that it's been a lot more affordable to actually order from there. Cook's is in Eugene, Oregon, and they have always sent out, they always have the best prices. So we're talking you can get plants, for a couple of cents to a couple of dollars. But that being said, their plants generally are also on the very, very small size. Sarasota Northwest is in Oregon as well. They have consistently really high quality plants. Some other places, Curious Plant recently opened in Ohio, and they have some really rare plants that you can't get anywhere else. So things like a lot of the Biblis species, a lot of rarer Mexican butterworts, and even tuberous sundews. That's a good resource.
What was the last one? Curious Plant?
Curious Plant, yeah.
Yeah, and then I, kind of in the Mid-Atlantic, specifically the Philadelphia region, a lot of the local nurseries will carry some of the more common species. So if you're looking for Sarracenia, specifically like Propaya or your like scarlet bells and yeah, the bug group of of hybrids and things like that, there are a number of nurseries around here that do sell them. So just keep your eye out. I have a typed up list of those. I'll post it in the Facebook group. And if you're not part of our Facebook group, make sure to check out the Mid-Atlantic Carnivorous Plant Society and join our Facebook group, like our Facebook page. If you're enjoying the format here of the live meeting, go ahead and follow our page. I'm sure we'll be posting some other stuff as well as this recording. So if you want to watch it later, that would be great.
Somebody else asked, any good nurseries in South Carolina?
For carnivorous plants in particular, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
I've heard Gasper Nursery's really good. That one I've actually heard of. The Pond Selection Nurseries, yeah, absolutely. So Wedgwood in the Philadelphia area, which is out in Glen Mills, and Terrain usually have a number of carnivorous plants in their pond section. Otts has usually some Venus flytraps, some pings, and some sundews, as well as some of the more common nepenthes. The Country Store, I believe it's called, in Delaware, they have actually a pretty decent selection of smaller carnivorous plants, as well as some really large nepenthes in the summer. You don't have Facebook. What are the other options? Yeah, so if you check out our website, you can join the email list. We are looking to build up some other presences, whether it's on Reddit, I'm not sure, or maybe another group, but we're definitely looking to expand our presence. But if you want to kind of keep in touch with us, I think the best ways to do that is to join the email list. Can they email the info at mapsociety.com to join that, or just do it through the website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question came up, is eBay a good place to buy plants? I mean, I have seen a lot of plants on eBay, but that would vary a lot seller by seller.
Yeah, I totally agree there. There's a lot of poached plants on eBay, so you have to be careful ordering things from abroad. So if something looks either too large or too good to be true for the price, if it's still got what looks like earth or something attached to it, if it's coming out of endemic area of where it came from. I try to stay away from that, but there are good eBay sellers that are out there. I would just make sure you're checking reviews and checking in some forums to make sure that those folks are doing things on the up and up. Because poaching is a major issue in this hobby. All right, does anybody have any other questions before we move on? I know you have a little bit of a delay to figure that out, but. All right. So it is 2 o'clock. Did we want to move into the presentation or?
That sounds great.
Okay. All right. So, favorite companion orchids for bog setups. I got one last minute question there.
Well, personally, I love Sporanthes, any of the lady tresses orchids. Usually you find Sporanthes cernua or odorata, which are fall blooming, which is nice to get that color then. You can also find, through the North American Sarracenia Conservancy, sometimes you'll get some weird stuff pop up when they do benefit auctions, and I had Praecox and Vernalis, which are spring blooming ones, which I'm excited about for this year. And then you can also find rose begonias, calopagons, which are nice like pink and white colors in the summertime. And you also can't beat, what are they? The frilled orchids, Planthera, which are really, really nice in the summertime.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is kind of go over the basic setup of a carnivorous plant terrarium, and specifically a fish tank, or if you have like an Exoterra reptile enclosure, something like that. So what I was originally planning on doing was actually building an entire enclosure here and then auctioning it off during the auction. Seeing as we don't have an auction today, and we are all kind of tuning in from all over the country, and I'm still going to go through that setup and what it will look like, but we're actually going to kind of do it on these little slides here. And then
Sorry to interrupt you, Jamie. It looks like it's showing Kevin on the YouTube page.
Uh-oh.
Is it just because it's behind?
I don't think so.
Spotlight video. All right, let's see if that works. I think I hit pan instead of spotlight, so it should update. Or not, I don't know. Oh, so Kevin's video is turned off now, so we should be able to see it. No, it's still Kevin. All right. Oh, hey, there we go. All right, so like I was saying, we're going to do that. So let's kind of start with what you need to have in order to build a fish tank terrarium. So there's a lot of different ways that people do this, and this is what I've been doing for the past few years. So the first thing you're going to want to have is a fish tank of the size that you want to use. So the fish tank that I have back here is a 29 long, but anything from a 10 gallon and up. I won't really go smaller than that with the technique that I'm using. And then we're going to need to first assess what you want to use as a drainage layer. After a drainage layer, then we're going to figure out your substrate, and we're going to physically build the background. So the tools that I used for the background are going to be waterfall foam. So your waterfall foam, I've used this brand, which you can get at Home Depot, or the Good Stuff brand. I use waterfall foam in particular because it is inert. It's not going to hurt anything that's there. You're not really going to have issues as much with off-gassing and potentially hurting your plants. And that's really important here. So all of the materials that I've chosen are things that are inert or safe for carnivorous plants. The second thing you're going to want to consider is if you're going to be using things like wood or bark. So I go to reptile shows and I'll pick up pieces of cork bark. I've found that that's one of the more inexpensive ways to get it. If you're ordering it online, it can really go up in price. So going to your local reptile show and finding things like that. And there's a few different shapes you can get. You can get kind of the log look, and it'll really just depend on what your vision is. When I start building a terrarium, I like to kind of draw out what I want it to look like, and then go from there. And then the other things you want to consider are if you're going to put wood in there, you're going to want to find a wood that is fairly waterproof. So things like grapevine are going to rot very quickly, and we want to make sure that the pieces that you're putting in there are fairly water resistant. So something like your cork bark is naturally somewhat antimicrobial, and then it's also fairly moisture resistant. So cork bark's a great option. But make sure to research what kind of woods. Really dense woods are usually good. And then you can also buy driftwood, which works really well as well. And then as far as your background goes, the other things that you're going to need are number one, silicone. I use the GE brand. And you want to find something that does not have any additives in it for mold resistance. So the clear indoor-outdoor silicone is the best one that I've found for it. You'll need a caulk gun for application. And then I also like to form little pockets in my background, and I use small pots. So you can use 1.5, 2-inch, 2.5-inch pots to build some little divots into the background, like you can see there. And you can fill those with substrate or even just put the pots in there so you can grow things out of the wall. And then I use just peat moss to cover the foam on the background. Other things you'll want to have, so again, going back down to your drainage layer, getting a drainage layer that will work for your system. Some people use an egg crate system, and then they cover it with some mesh so you don't have anything to go down into that drainage layer. And the benefit of that is that you can kind of see everything that's going on. You can easily see the water levels, and that system's fairly simple to set up. But for the sake of this tank and for this demonstration, we're actually going to use these pre-washed like a expanded clay pebbles. And the first thing you're going to want to do with those is make sure that they're really well washed for this. They usually come pretty dusty, so we want to make sure to do that. But those are the main things that you're going to want to have in order to set up your tank. And then what you do beyond that, as far as your substrate and what you put in it, will really depend on what your needs are. So we'll be building a tropical terrarium here. So I have a peat and sand mix, and then some long fiber sphagnum to fill up the substrate level. So let's kind of dive into the first step here. So after you've acquired your tank, you want to make sure it's really nice and clean, and get anything off of it, especially if you're buying a used tank. Or you're using a tank that was used for something else. I use a vinegar and water solution to clean the tank, and that seems to work the best for me. And once it's all nice and clean, you can do things like add black silicone to the walls so you don't see the foam as much, but you don't need to do that. And then once you've done that, actually what you need to do is take the end of your tank and physically lay out how you want things to look. So I'll take the tank and lay it on its side and really just try to put the different pieces in there so that I can see what's going on. And once you kind of have it figured out and you understand how it's going to look, you can actually start to build it up and put spray foam in. So once you've done that, I like to take a picture of it and then pull all of the bark and the pots out and start putting a small layer of foam in. So you're gonna wanna start probably about 4 or 5 inches up off of the bottom. That's going to leave room for your substrate and your drainage layer. That's really important. So try not to go all the way to the bottom, but like I said, start 4 or 5 inches up, and that amount will also depend on the size of your tank. So once you've done that, you can take your spray foam and you want to make sure it's really well shaken. And we're going to apply the spray foam to the back or sides. So this is the longest part of the process. The spray foam takes a while to cure, and of course this one's not going to work for me, but that's okay. And the thing that you want to remember with that spray foam is it's going to expand 3 to 4 times its size as it's going. And while you're doing this, you should be starting to place some of the pieces into the spray foam where you want them. When you're placing pots in there, it works really well to stuff that full of paper towels so it doesn't fill with the expanded foam. And then as well as if you have something that has a hole in it or something that you want to fill with substrate so that you can put plants in it, filling that with some paper towels will help as well. So you have to make sure that after you've applied your spray foam that everything is completely dry before you move to the next step. So this I did about 30 hours ago, and I've given it time to dry. If you actually look at the back, even after the 30 hours or so, there's still some in the center here that isn't quite dry yet. So realistically, you'd want to wait until everything is completely dry. After you've reached past 2 inches thick, you're going to have a lot harder time getting it to dry thoroughly. So try to A, understand and get a feel for how much foam you're putting out, how much you need, and then B, make sure that you've given it ample time to dry. Sometimes it helps to take something longer and sharp. I use a knitting needle actually, and just poke down to put some air into those layers. But it will dry eventually, it just takes a little bit longer. So if you're doing something like this, where you have foam on 3 walls, you're going to want to make sure that you do a wall a day. So you can do this wall, and then you'll carve it, and then do one of the other walls, and then the 3rd wall on the 3rd, 4th, 5th day, depending on when everything dries. If you try doing it all in one day, you're going to end up with a mess, and it's going to be really difficult to clean up. So just take your time with it. To build a terrarium of this size, it took me about a week. So the next thing that we're going to do after we have kind of laid out our tank, we've put our foam in, we've set everything into where it's supposed to go, you're going to take a serrated blade and you're going to cut the foam. So this is really important for a number of reasons. First of all, we're starting to actually shape what the walls of our terrarium look like. And then second of all, you're taking this shiny surface that the silicone's going to have trouble sticking to and making it something a little more grippy. So it's really important that you take your serrated knife and actually remove all of the smooth surface that you can, so that your silicone and your peat moss layer sticks really well. And you can take away as much or as little of this foam as you want to. And it's really up to you what you do with it. This particular tool is a drywall saw. The best tool that I've found for this is actually just a steak knife, a serrated steak knife. So now, you've got this nice, really open surface that you can put your silicone on. And then once you have it sculpted all the way that you want it sculpted, you can start to begin to move to the next step. So while I'm sculpting, and actually if I can move back for 1 second, this waterfall foam is very sticky. You do not want to get it onto your hands, your clothes, or anything you care about. So make sure that whatever surface you're working on is really well prepared, and that you wear, I use nitrile gloves, but you definitely want to wear gloves. I made the mistake the first time I built a fish tank terrarium of not wearing gloves, and I wasn't able to get the foam off of my hands for a long time. So gloves are really important through pretty much this whole process, because the silicone is also very sticky, and it's also hard to get off of anything you care about. So now we've got kind of this big sculpted area, and of course on your tank you would want to make sure that you get everything sculpted and finished up before you're ready to move on. But for the sake of the video, we're just going to start here. And the next part is also fairly messy. So again, like I said before, make sure that your surface is nicely prepared and that you have the proper equipment you need to protect yourself. So what we're going to do here is actually use caulk kind of as a glue to both seal and to put our kind of decorative sphagnum layer on. The sphagnum layer is going to both kind of protect the foam from the environment. It also makes it look nice and a little more natural. There are other options if you prefer something else to put on the background, but this has really, for me, been what's provided kind of the nicest look. And then it's actually fairly easy to get things to grow on it. So what I'm doing right now is just kind of putting a whole bunch of silicone all over that area. And you want to do this in a really well ventilated room. I've got my window open, and you also want to make sure you use enough. So I've taken it, and what we're going to do is with one hand, we're just going to kind of smush it around. And you want to make sure to get it in all the little cracks and crevices and really push it in there. This pure silicone is actually, it smells very, very, very strongly of vinegar, acetic acid. So that's why the ventilation is really important. So again, just kind of smush it anywhere that you have foam. When you're doing something more intricate like this, where you have multiple pieces that are overlapping each other, sometimes it's difficult to get into those little spaces, but you really want to try to do that to the best of your ability. And then the next step, after you've gotten all of the area really well siliconed, is to, with your non-silicone hand, start applying just some peat moss to it. And this will give you a really neat natural texture that works really well with your bark, your cork bark. And it should apply pretty well, pretty easily. But you want to try to make sure to get all of those areas covered that have the silicone on it. And sometimes it's kind of hard to do that, but you can always go back over it later if you find that you've got a spot that you missed, and just put a little more silicone on it and then add a little bit more of the peat moss. And you're going to work in little areas like this. Again, everything would be carved, but you want to try to get things peated before the silicone starts to set. You've got maybe about a 10 or 15-minute working time before things don't really start sticking quite as well. So you would repeat this for the entire background until all of the foam is covered with the peat moss. I've seen other people take and put some cloth across so that you can saturate it and help saturate your background. In other tanks that I've done, I've actually run water systems so that it'll water the back with a little pond pump and some tubing, and that works really well. But that kind of gives you an idea of what the background's going to start to look like as you put the peat moss onto it. Regarding kind of this pocket here, so I made this with this little 2.5-inch pot. And then what you do with that's really up to you. Sometimes I'll leave it on here and you can take silicone and mix it with the peat moss to make kind of a putty, and you can hide that or you can leave it if you've got something trailing. But that's really up to you. When you're designing your background, you should try to keep in mind the angles that you're putting things at. You want to make sure that the angle is such that it'll still drain down and that your plant is kind of popped up. I wouldn't go any more extreme than like a 45-degree angle downward, but you can have things that are 90 or anything in between, but kind of nothing less than that 45-degree angle. So once your background's done, you kind of begin to move towards the fun part of this adventure, which is actually taking and filling your tank and putting things in it. After you've done this particular step, I would suggest waiting 2 or 3 days for the silicone to cure. There are some silicones that you can cure a little bit faster by using a water bottle and just spraying some water on it. And for everything in this process, I'm using distilled or reverse osmosis water, just so you're aware. But what we can begin to do here is to start to assemble the drainage layer now that our background's finished. So, like I said earlier, the drainage layer for this build is going to be made up of these expanded clay pebbles. The most important thing to remember with using these is that they have to be washed really, really well. So it takes me probably close to an hour of running just regular shower water or your regular tap water through, and then I'll rinse them off at the end with reverse osmosis or distilled water. And that's to take all the extra clay, dust and things, dirt that are in there. I haven't had an issue with them hurting my plants. I've always done really well with these terrariums. So I don't really have a worry about that. But we're going to take and transfer these pebbles into the terrarium. So I like to put a few handfuls down, and then we can just kind of pour it in. So this is where that 4 or 5 inches is going to make a big difference because we're able to take and push these pebbles all the way around the bottom of the tank. I like to have 1 inch to 1.5 inches of pebbles. So you can see here that they are nicely spread across, and I have about 1.5 inches there. You can get these pebbles at somewhere like IKEA. You can also get them online. But the best place to get them is actually from a hydroponic growing store. That's where you're going to be able to get the best bulk options and the best pricing. So what we're going to do now is try to separate our drainage layer from the rest of the tank. And I'm going to do this with this mesh here. It is an Exoterra bio-drain mesh, and it's specifically made to separate those two layers. Some people use window screen or landscape fabric, but I find that the bio-drain mesh has holes that allow the water to go through really easily. And it's also inert, so I'm not worried about it rusting and contaminating my tank and possibly hurting my plants. So you're going to take your bio-drain fabric or whatever you use and lay it across the drainage layer. Ideally, you want to have a bio-drain that is correct for your tank size. This particular tank used to have a water feature in it. So this mesh that I'm using was the original mesh from that project. So it doesn't actually extend all the way over, but for my purposes, that's actually fine. So I'm going to have plants that like a little bit more water on that side, and that should be fine. So once you're happy with that, we can start to build the actual substrate level. And that's going to be a mix that I make of 50% coarse pool filter sand, it's 100% silica, and then 50% just regular peat moss. And there's, it looks like there's a little bit of orchid bark in there. But that's the mix that I use for my terrariums. So we're just going to start to pile some of that in. This layer is not going to be all that thick, maybe 3/4 of an inch to an inch. And you don't really have to be super careful about it. But if you've got lots of pockets and things like I do in the background, it's easy to get those filled up with stuff. So I like to just be a little bit careful. Okay. Okay, so now that I've got the dirt in here, we can, your substrate, we can kind of spread that around. Here we go. Then I like to just kind of push it down so it's all somewhat on one layer, one level. And you can see it's well separated from the drainage layer here. And then the last level of your terrarium here is just going to be made up of long fiber sphagnum moss. I like the brand Sphagnum moss, which I get on Amazon. It seems to have the least amount of twigs and sticks and stuff. And I like to kind of fill the rest of this layer here with the sphagnum moss. Like that. Okay. And then this layer should be kind of as high as you want it to be. I try to have a fairly thick layer of the sphagnum. Here we go. So now we have our drainage layer, we have our substrate layer, and we have our background finished. As you can see, let me. So you can kind of see here where I've been able to build my background out. I have the different woods and the pieces of cork bark and things together. And then also the different layers here of the substrate. Okay. All right. And then kind of the last thing I want to talk about here is what kind of plants you put in a tank like this. So during the Q&A, we talked about the indoor plants, and that's really what I'd use here. So you're going to want to stay away from things like Venus flytraps. You're going to want to stay away from Sarracenia species, any of those temperate sort of sundews or butterworts, anything that needs a dormancy. And we're going to stick to tropical plants. So here are some Pinguicula cyclosecta that we can put in there. And in this particular setup, I'm actually going to put a couple of these lava rocks in and see how that goes. For me, doing these terrariums and things is all really just an experiment. They do really well for plants. I find that utricularias do really well. And then these guys are protocarnivorous. This is a stylidium, and they're called trigger plants. So this one I have here is actually in bloom, and the neat function of this, and let me see if I have a pin here. When the plant is pollinated, there's a little trigger here that will actually actuate much like a carnivorous, a Venus flytrap rather would. But I can't seem to get it to want to actuate today. So these guys do really, really well in there. They're very, very prolific plants. And then I just have a kind of mixed pot of utricularia here. So when you're planting in here, you have a couple things to take into consideration. So you're looking at what's going to work in the back. Sometimes I'll do some younger Nepenthes or something back there. But a lot of times I do companion plants in the wall, and then sundews, butterworts, utricularia, things down here. The other thing to remember is that anything that you put onto the surface here is going to get commingled. So, even though I know what most of these particular species are, I could never sell this as or give it away as one particular plant. You kind of just have to say it's a mix of stuff. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. And then the other thing is, whatever you put down here, whatever's happiest is going to take over, especially if it's a spreading plant like these bladderworts are. So, it's a lot of things to really consider and research when you're figuring out what kind of plants to do. And then the other thing is with care, obviously down in the substrate layer, this area is going to be really well watered and taken care of because you have areas where the substrate is sitting right on top of the drainage layer and it's able to wick up. Up in the top is still going to need regular watering unless you put a watering system in there or some sort of misting system. But that's all up to you. Made a mess. Plants that I like to put into the top area are things like ant plants. So this is a why can't I think of the name of it? Primiflora is the second half of it. But I would, take something like this and put him up here into that box. And then the other things that you should consider while you're planting your tank are your lights. I like to put lights on top of it. And I also have a glass screen that goes across the top. So making sure that you have a light that is the correct distance and the correct wattage for your tank. As far as what plants have done really well for me as well is also any of the Australian sundews and the pygmy sundews do really well in these tanks. But overall, you kind of get an idea of what we're doing here. And I'm going to wrap up here by saying that during the next meeting that we have in person, I'd like to take a 10-gallon tank that I'm going to create a carnivorous terrarium out of, and we will have that open for an auction next time. So make sure you either sign up with our email, follow us on Facebook to have an opportunity to purchase or win bid on that 10-gallon custom back terrarium.
Awesome. That is beautiful, Jamie. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions.
Sure.
Have you ever had issues with snails in your terrarium? Is there any way to get rid of them while maintaining a low TDS?
Yeah, so I actually have had snail issues, and what I do is just pick them out. Being completely honest, part of the reason I pulled the tank apart was that I did have snails. So you can, once you take all of the plants out, treat them and treat the environment individually. Like 1,000 snails. I have no clue what to do about like 1,000 snails. I had like 4. Let me see. Yes, it's a pink primiflora, air movement. Yes, so I did not mention that. I use an aquarium fan. And this guy sits up at the top and blows into the tank. I run it 12 hours a day. and this guy is usually pretty quiet, so I don't mind it too much. But it's just I think it was $15-20 on Amazon. Just salt and scrap everything. Yeah. So any suctions on there, and you put the thing on the other way. Let's see, what other questions? How about
overheating?
drill? I haven't had any issues with the foam sticking, so I haven't ever had to do that. I mean, I can't pull the foam off. It's actually quite a pain to remove. The waterfall foam is incredibly sticky. It may be the stickiest thing I've ever experienced. And that's saying something.
Have you ever had, oh, sorry, never mind. I already answered that one.
So, yep, it's the hydroton balls. That's correct. It's not the agonite. The hydroton's correct. Let's see. I have an orchid terrarium. Okay, with a leak of false bottom, and it's grown in sphagnum utricularia very well. Yeah, leek has been really interesting. I've been experimenting with it a lot. Orchids do really, really well in this tank. I've had a number of orchids in there. Do I need a cat? Have I put bugs in there? All right. Yeah, so when I started the tank, I put in a culture of Dalmatian isopods, and they did super well until the utricularia started really expanding. And then I had really massive, well-grown utricularia and no more isopods. So they work great until there are too many carnivorous plants to keep the population up. But it does help with things like mold or any mildewy smell. I did find that with isopods in there that it worked out pretty well, like I said, until they all got eaten. Springtails are cute. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I know you said you had a supply list, so we will be posting that somewhere.
Yeah. Kevin, where did the itinerary? Who's okay? Daniel DePietro. Sure, you can join. Sorry. I did make the supply list and the kind of synopsis.
Yeah, so if you go onto our website, under the post for today, you will see that there is a link to the schedule, and the schedule also has the supply list posted there. But what we can do is also post it on our Facebook group and send it out through email as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I can put links as well to the specific products that I used if folks would find that helpful. Okay, so I believe we have a couple of presentations as far as member setups go.
Yes.
All right. And do you know who was going first?
I am going to go first.
Okay, perfect. So I will give you the spotlight.
All right. So this is a bit of a contrast to Jamie's well thought out and planned beautiful terrarium that Jamie just showed us. I just titled my terrarium actually Wild Drosera Garden, and that's pretty much what it looks like. I'm just doing this with my computer, so hopefully you guys can see that. This was not really planned or thought out at all. I kind of, in the front, there's a mix of peat and sand, and in the back, there actually isn't any soil. It's just a bunch of live sphagnum. It's pretty much this big. I started with one Drosera Adelaide, and as you can see, it has really expanded and grown quite a bit. Even I'm trying to see if I can show the back of the tank, like in the very back, it's kind of started growing through there. Then I have one Nepenthes, which it's a Nepenthes. This is the only Nepenthes I've had that's actually done good. All of my other ones like totally dry out. So I'm pretty excited for that. And then up here in this little glass thing, there's just some Cape Sundews. You can kind of see I've got a flower. It's going to flower and that kind of sticks out the top. So yeah, it's pretty it wasn't really thought out. I just kind of put stuff in there and saw what happened, and I absolutely love it. So yeah. So you can see that even if you don't have a lot of time and don't want to get a bunch of supplies, you can also just kind of grow stuff in a tank. Although I really plan on using Jamie's tutorial to do up one of my other tanks like that, because that is so cool. But I think I'm actually going to kind of leave this one as it is and just sort of let it grow crazily. The Nepenthes, it's a Nepenthes ramaspina. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I can type it in. I can try and see. I don't know if I can like zoom in on anything with this because I'm just kind of using my computer, but there are like some little baby pictures coming in that are kind of cute. So yeah, that's my setup. All I really do for it is pour in water. I have millipedes in there, which was not intentional. I had this sphagnum outside, and I think when I brought it back in, it came in with millipedes. So I don't see any right now, but it's kind of cool because I'll see them crawling around on the sundews. I've never seen any of them get eaten by the plants. As far as feeding, every so often the Cape Sundews especially will just catch something on their own. I think one of them has wrapped around a fly right now. I just bought fertilizer and have been meaning to figure that out and start fertilizing them, but as of right now, I don't really do much feeding for these guys at all. Every so often I'll like find a bug and put it in there and feed it to my plants. So yeah, that's my little wild Drosera garden.
Was Kevin or Daniel next, or
I think
Kevin will go?
Kevin was going to go next if he's ready. Yes.
Hey. Whoa.
Mute
Can you hear me?
You can mute.
Yeah, I think we're good now.
Hey. I'm gonna try to do this on my phone. I've never done this before. Is there a way I can switch the? Oh, here we go. 1 second. Great. So I'm going to show you what I have going on. So I just recently built this grow tent for my Nepenthes, my lowland and intermediate grow tents. I built this literally yesterday. But as you can see here, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I have kind of the whole gamut of Nepenthes here. So you have, I guess in the back here, you can see kind of a cutting that I once had, an older cutting of Nepenthes ventrata that has since rooted and produced pitchers. I have a couple of sundews that had grown from seed. Here you can see that I have, a whole bunch of things. A really nice hybrid I have is Nepenthes Gaia, really nice pictures if I can actually find one underneath this mess. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but I have a couple of nice pictures there. Also, I really like Anthelaria. So you can see here, there's a really cute Anthelaria picture. I also really like Lady Luck, which is a nice hybrid that you can often find at flower shows or in your local garden center. And down here, I have a couple of relatively sadder looking plants, but I do have this variegated gracilis. I don't know if you can see that it's actually variegated. I recently moved it out, and in the construction of this, the humidity fell quite precipitously, so it's not looking as good as it was before. I have a really large ampullaria. It's got a ton of pictures on the top. So that's the new grow tent that I just set up. But I will also show you that I have some other plants. So here, you can see the shelf where I actually have a lot of Drosera pinnata seedlings. I have a Darlingtonia that is growing indoors because it's still relatively cold outside. I have a bunch of Mexican butterworts. I think these are really cute. They're relatively easy to grow. I have a couple of cephalotus in the back over here. And then back here is kind of like what Anna showed, but it's much, much worse looking. It's really this tangle of a bunch of different sundees all growing together. I do like Nepenthes a lot. So I also have my Highland Nepenthes set up inside a fridge. And here I have a lot of I have Heliumphora. So you can see that growing out in the back. I have some Adelia, also some sundews, a bunch of other pitcher plants. Down here are some more Nepenthes. So a couple more Heliumphora. I have Drosera schizandra all the way back here. This is a really nice, easy to grow sundew. I got this Drosera, I'm going to butcher the name, but I think it's Gramogalensis that I actually got from Dan DePietro, who'll be giving his talk later. I also have in here somewhere, I have Nepenthes hamada, which is one of those really ultra highland growing plants. And yeah, that's basically the highland setup. I grow, whoops. So I grow my fly traps outside. And you can see this is very messy, but I have a lot of baby fly traps growing out here. I have some Sarracenia that are putting out flower stalks, and we have quite a problem with squirrels. So that's why everything is encased inside chicken wire. I have some more fly traps over here. And then up here, I have some Nepenthes ventrata that are just growing, kind of as houseplants. And you can see I have Pinnata as well. So yeah, that's my setup.
That's so cool, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing all of your plants.
Thanks.
All right. So who's up next? Oh, and Kevin, you had a couple questions too. It was, how do you cool the tent?
Which tent? Oh, sorry.
Hang on.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So I guess what is your what's your temperature system? For
Sorry, can you one more time? Can you hear me?
yeah.
Oh, so that grow tent is not cooled. It's actually for lowland and intermediate Nepenthes. So if anything, I want it hot. So there are lights inside of there, and those lights will provide the heat. The things that need cooling are the Highland Nepenthes, and I grow those in the fridge.
How did you think to put them in a refrigerator?
A lot of creative thought, I guess, or potentially stupid thoughts, but they need a nighttime temperature dip. So a lot of people use AC, but I live in an apartment, so it's relatively hard to actually find some way to vent the AC to the outdoors. And the fridge is, it's relatively large, so it allows me to basically cool temperatures down at night.
All right, Dan, were you ready? Okay, we've got video, but I don't think you have any audio yet.
Somebody did ask Kevin if the Nepenthes do well sitting in water trays.
So that's a question that you will definitely find a lot of heated debate on. For me, I like to go with a low maintenance setup. I don't know if people who know me well know this, but I try to keep maintenance as low as possible. They do not like having their roots wet all the time, but I think having a couple of millimeters of water in the tray is fine for them. It just helps to keep the humidity high, which is one of the biggest struggles.
Somebody did ask Kevin if the Nepenthes do well sitting in water trays.
So that's a question that you will definitely.
Hello?
All right, we can hear you now, Dan.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to see how to turn my camera. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my helium forest setup. So pretty much I grow everything on these wooden racks that I built around my room. So this is where I have all the helium flora. Let me see if I could change the front facing camera, because this seems, 1 second. I'm not sure how to do that, but so here I have the helium flora trays. These are all top watered. I grow them in Canuma, actually. So that's what that orange soil is on top. So that's a special kind of Japanese bonsai soil. It's like a more acidic pumice, actually. But I'm particularly, at the moment, very happy with this plant. This is a helium flora nebulae that I've been growing for a while. So here we have the Drosera setup. So these are mostly South American Drosera. You could see here I have my big pot of Graham ogolensis. Over here I have a pot of Solaris. I have some smaller Regia over here. I have a Drosera magnifica that's starting to do nicely as well over here. And also some smaller guys of that. Here's some smaller magnifica that I've been propagating. So this is where I keep my Nepenthes. This is probably my favorite Nepenthes that I grow. It's my Nepenthes macrophylla. It's really slow grower, but really nice pictures on it at the moment. Let's see. And over here, you could see my Nepenthes lowii as well. Also a really slow grower. Probably slower than macrophylla, but really starting to pick up, putting out some nice lowers. What else? Nice Nepenthes vogelii also over here. This was actually a cutting from Alvin Liu that I got around a year ago. That's starting to pick up. What else? I started to actually grow a few non-carnivorous plants in this room as well, very recently. So you could see here, that's an Anthurium warricanum, still acclimating, but over here, still acclimating and not the easiest grower for me, at least. I have some bulbophyllum as well. I believe this is Veitchianum, bulbophyllum lobii over here. Some more bulbophyllum. This is actually Alvin's Utricularia quelchii that I have growing in this net pot. This is one of my really prized plants, my Utricularia alpina. This form you could see gets absolutely huge. Some of the leaves are 6-7 inches long. Here I have a Nepenthes Veitchii biberbigiae. This is also actually one of Alvin's plants that I'm currently looking after in here. Over here, I have, this is actually one of my first Nepenthes, a Spectabilis bibeachii seed grown plant. Over here I have a Ventricosa bihumata. This clone's been doing nicely for me. Seems to have good teeth actually. I have some more orchids over here. This is a Guarianth skinneri. I believe it used to be a Cattleya, but got reclassified. And some more bulbophyllum. Then here's my tank of Petiolaris sundews. One of my favorite types of carnivorous plants. So this tank's a little interesting, actually. It's no maintenance at all. You could see in the back, I have a float valve installed that maintains about a 1/4 inch of water in the tank at all times. And underneath this glass bottom, I have an aquarium heater that keeps the water heated to about 90 degrees. I put this black pond liner in the tank, as well as this reflective mylar-like material on the back. Yeah, these are probably my favorite type of sundew. This is a Drosera lanata from Flying Fox Creek in Australia. Here we have a Drosera fulva, also from Australia. Probably my favorite species in the complex is Drosera brumensis. They look like fireworks to me. I'm really happy with how these are doing. But yeah, these like it very hot. This tank during the day, I'd say, is over 100 degrees. And at night probably cools down to probably 85. Certainly no less than 85, maybe even in the 90s in the summer. I think that's pretty much it. I've I had pests actually a few months ago, so a lot of these plants are still recovering from that. My hamada is not really picturing right now. I have a Nepenthes Horeliana though, is looking pretty nice at the moment. Has a nice leaf jump on it actually. So I'm hoping that that'll be making some bigger pictures soon. And that's pretty much it, I believe, yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic, Dan.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love seeing all your plants.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing.
But what's the humidity of the room?
Oh, so I have a hydrofogger over here. So that's on a humidistat and it wavers around 80%, I would say, maybe a little higher at night. Yeah, I try to keep it a little, I don't want it above 90 really, because then I have issues with mold.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that 80 is like a happy medium where I don't get mold, but the plants are happy with that.
Great, thanks. That's a fantastic setup.
Thank you.
All right, was there anybody else touring their setups?
I think that was it.
Perfect, and we're actually running pretty much on time.
Somebody asked if you live in a house or an apartment.
Oh, so this is actually in a house. I built this room last summer, actually. It's attached to my house, so you could enter it directly from the house.
That's so cool. Alrighty. So, Anna, did you want to dive into the next part then?
Yeah, so we have a raffle. We have 2 prizes. The first one is for a gift card to our sponsor, which is generously donated by Carnivorous Plant Nursery, which I know we've mentioned a few times, but is a really great place, not just to buy plants, but they also have a lot of information on growing different types of plants. And then the second prize is a year-long membership to our society. So the way we will do this is, if I can figure out to share screen. Can you guys see the random number generator? Oh, wait. Is that working?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. So we have 38 people wanted to be entered. So this will be the prize for the gift card, which will be number 24. So that is Jerry Smith. So if
Jerry,
yeah, I'm pretty sure is here.
Yeah, he's been commenting, and then we're also featuring his video on the website.
Yes. So congratulations, Jerry. You have won a $50 gift card to Carnivorous Plant Nursery. We will email you the code for that so you can use that. And then the second one is number 18. So that is Casey Miller. If Casey Miller is here, if you could please comment in the chat on YouTube to claim your prize. That is for Casey Miller for a year-long membership to MACPS.
I saw there was a Carl Miller in the chat, so I'm not sure if there's any relation that, there, but perhaps.
I know there's a little bit of a delay, so we'll have to give it a few minutes.
But congratulations to both of our winners. Did we have closing remarks? Or are we gonna wait? I guess just wait until somebody claims it then. Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, let's wait a couple of seconds.
Yeah. No relation.
Okay, let's see if Casey Miller responds. So I don't think Casey Miller is here, so I'm going to do that again. Can you guys see the number generator?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we have number 2, which is John Hollister. Is John Hollister here?
And actually, speaking of John Hollister, he sent me some pictures of his setup. So once we wrap up with this, let me go through that. I know I emailed him earlier, and I'm not sure if he's on or not, though.
Okay.
Oh, there he
Yay!
is.
Congratulations, John.
Awesome.
So we will be in touch with you via email to get you your year-long membership. Thank you so much.
And then on that note, John also sent me some pictures of his setup today. So I will, as long as everybody can see it, kind of scroll through. So I know he said he has Cephalotus, Nepenthes hamata in here. There's a Drosera regia and a couple other plants inside of the tank here. He has some Drosera adelaide, which he says grows really well under the cloche jar. And then some Heliumphora and the Regia there again in a tank. And then he actually uses ice cubes to help cool the roots off and also drop the temperature of the tank in the evenings, which is a pretty neat technique if you don't have access to a carnivorous plant specific refrigerator. There's some fantastic teeth on that hamata. That's really nice. And the beautiful clump of Cephalotus here. So some really neat plants. And then I believe these were his outdoor bogs that are just waking up right now. And some of the water wheel plant, the Aldrovandra sprigs, I believe in a pond or a tank, I don't remember. But thank you so much, John, for shooting these over, and I'm excited for you to get your membership for the year.
I actually want to mention something really quickly, but John Hollister entered a bunch of these plants into the Philadelphia Flower Show, where he won a lot of well-deserved prizes. So for instance, his Cephalotus was in there and won blue ribbons on multiple days. So
that's fantastic. Congrats for that as well, John. Well grown.
So with that, I think that concludes our meeting for today. We hope you really enjoyed tuning in, and we will definitely be in touch with you regarding whether we will have in-person meetings coming up. So currently we have planned a field trip to the Suitland Bog in June. Of course, it's already late April right now. So with the current situation, we're not sure how feasible that is, but keep an eye out for emails from us. Also check our website out. We will post updates there. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thanks to all the board members for helping to organize this, and stay healthy, be well. Thanks everyone.
Thanks guys.
Yeah. Okay.